And welcome back. My next guest is Kevin Kilduff, a Vietnam veteran and the former police chief for the Clarkstown Police Department. Welcome, Kevin.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
So, for this veteran segment, I felt it was important on hometown happenings to make sure that we really kind of paid due diligence and reference to our vets. And so we have a vet on each one of our programs, and really to kind of talk about their service. Now, it's kind of unique because it gives me the opportunity as well to kind of have you speak a little bit about your service to the town as the former police chief, former police officer a long time, and then as the police chief for the town, and now retired for a good number of years. But before we get to that, maybe we could just get to your background. How long have you lived in the town, and
Sure.
And then what led you into being, law enforcement and then becoming our police chief?
Well, I scored well on a couple of tests on the chief thing. That always helped. I was born in the Bronx. I'm one of 7 children. I'm the only boy with 6 sisters, so I've had women running my life forever. I kid about that. My only daughter is an attorney, so she and her mother gang up on me once in a while. But I've lived in town for just about 60 years now. We moved up from the Bronx in 1958, and we lived over in the West Clarkstown, Red Hill Road area of town. It's the East Ramapo section of town. So we went to school. My family was very heavily involved in Catholic education. So we went to Spring Valley Elementary School over on Main Street in Spring Valley. And then from there I went to Albertus Magnus. And after that I went to Marist College and Mercy College. So I have a lot of Catholic education in my background, as I'm sure you do. Right?
Right.
That being said, my father was a very heavily decorated World War II veteran, and something he never brought up, but all my uncles, their close friends, they were all World War II guys. A lot of them had served in very serious places like Iwo Jima, Normandy, and these were guys that they were there and they really didn't talk about it, so you'd have a lot of respect for them. I remember when I was 12 years old, my father and I were swimming, and he jumped up on the side of a pool. And the next thing I said, Dad, your knee's bleeding. And he says, geez, I haven't had one of these in years. And he picked out a sliver of shrapnel from when he was hit. And I remember as a 12-year-old kid thinking, my Lord, here you can live with shrapnel and things in your body, But that was part of it. My grandfather had come over from Ireland on my mother's side. He was a city police officer in Harlem. One of his 2 sons, my mother's 2 brothers, my Uncle John retired as a deputy brigade chief in the fire department. And my other Uncle Pat, my godfather, was a plainclothes officer in the city PD. So, my father was injured. He was in the liquor business in Midtown, and my mother became a teacher and later a Eucharistic minister in the Catholic Church. So that's a lot of my background. Everybody was pretty straight-laced. But me, in 1970, the draft was there. I was going to wind up probably being drafted, so I volunteered and went in for 2 years, and I asked for the military police and got that.
And so you were in the Army? I
was in the Army, right, correct. And it was funny, I did what they call AIT, Advanced Individual Training, down at Fort Gordon in Georgia. And 140 guys graduating the company, and they're telling, oh yeah, these 6 guys are going to Japan. These following 10 guys are going to Germany. And then the last 6 guys, the following 6 guys are going to ARVN. And what the heck is ARVN? It stands for the Army Republic of Vietnam. And I was one of the 6. So over to Vietnam I go, was an MP for 13 months. And for most of the time, I was assigned to an Army Security Agency outfit. And they ran kind of special planes, UH, U-21s, up into the Ho Chi Minh Trail and along the DMZ. And we were pretty much the security detachment for them. But we did other stuff, ran some convoys and a lot of security stuff. So,
tell me a little bit about that experience. So you went through local schools, and obviously based on your family background, law enforcement was something that was, law enforcement in the church. So I guess you could have become a cop or a priest, and you decided to become a cop. So you go into the military, and you go into Vietnam, and as you're in, you're a military police officer. So what was basic training like for that? Can you think back to what the basic training was like?
Basic training I went through in Fort Dix, New Jersey. It was the heat of the summer. It was a very hot summer that day. And we had the good fortune to be the, I believe they called it the trial company, which means, okay, they're going to try out all sorts of new gimmicks that the Army was fond of doing. And I remember we went on a couple of 20-mile hikes with full packs and stuff like that in the heat of the summer. So, you know, basic wasn't too much fun. But then after that, I got sent down to Augusta, Georgia, and that was also very, very hot. And I remember the first time we went out to the range out there. The Army range people are very strict. They don't, you don't turn around with a gun in your hand. Somebody will take care of that real quick. But they told us, they showed us, and said, okay, when you come out here, check all these shooting pits first, because you're liable to find some good timber rattlers in them. And they had a whole bunch of them strung up there. So, you know, here I am, the kid from suburbia, not used to timber rattlers. So that was something you didn't want to see. And then, you know, on that same vein, when I was in Vietnam, they called it a step and a half. A Bamboo Viper, I believe, was the actually. Darn near got me.
Wow.
I got it with an M16, but it wouldn't have been fun to get bitten by one of those. But I was fortunate in there in 1970, 71. We were out in the field like the infantry guys were. You know, that wasn't our main job. Though we did respond on what they called react forces, where we set up if one side of the base had gotten hit, and sometimes that happened, but not very often. I was in a place called the Phu Bai Combat Base, just south of Hue along Highway 1. So we went out, you know, I would say probably a half dozen times in my time there as a react force, where you set up kind of like an ambush along the bunker line in the rice paddies, and it was a scary prospect, because I knew most of the guys who were out there weren't infantrymen. And you get on an ambush, I was more afraid of our guys than the bad guys out there. You know? But you know, there were times we ran convoys down to either up to Hue or down to Da Nang. So I saw a little bit of the country there, and I came in and out of the country through what they call MACV headquarters, Military Assistance Command Vietnam, one of those Army acronyms, out of Saigon. So I was in Saigon probably about 10 days all told, and I did see Hue and Da Nang, you know, some of the bigger places over there. So.
And in terms of some of your experience, I mean, obviously, you know, you were there in 70, 71, so there was still, you know, a good bit of fighting going on, and you know, how close did you experience? I mean, what was the closest call that you had?
We had some rockets and mortars hit. I think the closest one maybe was a couple of 100 yards away, but it'll shake the ground. It'll rattle your teeth. Believe me. You know, it's there were supposed probes by sapper units, basically commando type of units, but actually me shooting anybody up close didn't happen. The closest I did come was in a secure area of the Phu Bai flight line. There was a Vietnamese mama son who I believe they called them JP. They were aviation gas, big tankers, probably a half dozen of them. And myself and one of the other guys riding in a Jeep, we look over and here she's putting something up onto a JP-4 tanker. And we're looking at each other, oh my God, you know, so over we go, and we're pointing M16s at her because we figure it might be a satchel charge. And we're hoping whatever it is doesn't blow up.
Right.
As it turned out, it was crazy. The woman had a big bag, and it was almost like earplugs full of heroin. And it was a drop for whomever it might be. So we basically arrest her and put her in cuffs, and we take her to the Army Criminal Investigation Division guys. And they say, oh boy, and they hand her over to the Vietnamese National Police. And they were called the White Mice. But anyway, what happens, the next thing we hear screaming from next door. And we're looking at the two warrant officers, the criminal investigation guys, and they said, no, don't worry about it. You'll report, you guys are fine. I said, what the heck are they doing to her? And it turned out that we thought they were trying to get some information out of her. It It was they weren't getting their cut of the heroin.
Wow.
That's what they told. So
Wow.
it was a crazy war by that point,
Yeah.
and that's some of the stuff that the military police was seeing.
So after your service in Vietnam, you cycled back home. What did you do right after the war?
I finished up getting a couple of degrees, and then from there, I went. Well, I better say I got married. Yeah, I'm married 46 years, so I know
Okay,
I know to cover
congratulations, yeah.
myself on that. Sorry, hon. But anyway, I went and was taking all sorts of civil service tests and stuff, and the first place to call was the Port Authority Police, and I was on the Port Authority for a year, and you know, that would have been 1973. And in 1974, I got to call to Clarkstown, and you know, for the next 29 years, I was yours. You know, I made sergeant in '82, lieutenant in '86, and then detective lieutenant in '96, captain a year later, and then a chief a year and a half later after that.
And how long were you chief over here for?
5 years, from '98 through 2003.
Wow.
You know, we had a few good moments in there that I'll never forget. You know, everybody was complaining about Y2K, that the world was going to end on that, and well, we as the chiefs had to go out and make a number of you know, different talks around the county that the world wasn't going to end. And I can still see my good friend Billy Franks, who's now a judge in Stony Point, who was the chief in Stony Point at the time. Some guy said, you know, we want all you guys to barricade the Tappan Zee Bridge and the George Washington Bridge so nobody can come up in the city. And Billy said to him, "Sir, what town do you live in?" And the guy, I believe the guy said Orangetown. He said, "Thank you, Jesus." This guy's not in my town. But that, yeah, it was experiences like that. But then the worst one, obviously, from in my time as a chief was, you know, 911. And that day, you know, I always like to think I kind of led from the front, but we sent 25 of our guys down, and we thought it was a rescue mission down. You know, we didn't know what was coming.
Right.
And we sent them down. One of them was my brother-in-law, Dave Troyes, the PBA president at the time. And these were guys, you know, I worked with just about all my life, it seemed. And I'm sending them down maybe to die. You know, I didn't know, we didn't know what the follow-up may be, you know. So that was a very testy 48 hours. We had our guys down there, and you know, I was saying a lot of prayers those 48 hours, you know.
And certainly I know that, you know, just with that, then it was also the Clarkstown Police Department with their honor guard and with really the dignity that they've offered to so many residents and Rockland residents that were killed as a result of 9/11. And so certainly I know your leadership at that point was invaluable too.
I was privileged. Our guys had the honor of burying, I believe it was 26 New York City firemen. They carried the coffins, and you know, that a couple of those guys I knew. You know, so that it takes its toll. I mean, there was no way it couldn't be an emotional toll. And then Reverend Dave Lothrop was tremendous. We set up the. We were actually the point for all the families. I believe it was 74 families who had lost people down there. And we had them coming in, bringing things like hairbrushes and stuff so we could get the DNA off it. And those were tough moments in the police station then, but a lot of our people really stepped up to the plate then. And right among them was the Reverend. He did one heck of a job down there. I don't think someday he should be recognized for that.
Yeah,
So.
no, he was invaluable to us as we redid the monument and the relationship he's kept with the families as well from that time frame. You know, we're just about out of time, but I do want to recognize as well that you're very involved with the Congress VMA. You're a Congress resident now,
Right.
have been for very many years, and maybe you could just speak a little bit about your involvement with the VMA.
Well, I had, I guess it was 1993. I think it's 25 years now I've been on the board. And for 5 of them, I was the president and a number of other offices. We try to do a lot of different things for the community over there. We're sponsoring December 8th. We'll have the Santa Claus arriving by helicopter. And it's open to all the kids in town. You know, we mostly get Congress Valley Cottage kids, but we sponsor the Memorial Day Parade. and we make our fields available out there. We own the field off Sheridan Avenue, and we own the field right behind the building there. So we've tried to make it available for the Knights of Columbus, all sorts of different things, the parades, the firemen's carnivals, those kind of things. So yeah, I heavily involved with that. I saw you last weekend, you know, up there. Thank you for the wreath laying ceremony. We're hoping to expand on that. But generally, we try to make the building available for everybody, from the Boy Scouts to 12-step groups, and you know, that keeps me busy. I'm on a couple other committees. A small one is the Town Memorial Day Committee. I'm involved. I stayed involved. The late Jim Kralik and Louis Falco are old friends of mine, and they asked me to stay on what they call the ATAG unit, which is basically the Anti-Terrorist Analyst Group. It's basically, if there's any real serious stuff, a lot of different sources, we'll see how it applies to Rockland County Policing and try to help out that way. So, yeah, I try to keep my finger in a few things. But
and the American Legion as well, right?
Oh, yeah, I remember American Legion, the VFW, and the Disabled American Vets. So, yeah, I got my finger in a few pies.
Well, you know, Chief, I really I want to thank you because you know, you've been a great guest, but I want to thank you for your service. Your service, you know, in Vietnam, your service in the military, your service as a police officer, and your service as our Clarkstown, ultimately as our Clarkstown Police Chief for just over 5 years, and certainly during that critical time of 9/11. That was one of the darkest moments that our country has faced in the last 100 years, maybe ever, and we were at the brunt of it. It was really, you know, right here, and so many first responders and people from Rockland have perished in the towers, and you know, really that was a critical time, and we needed strong leadership, and you provided that for the police department. So we want to thank you for all that.
All right. Well, my pleasure to be here, and I wish you well on what you're doing in town.
Great.
You know, there's a lot of good stuff here in Clarkstown.
Great. Thanks so much, Chief.
Okay.
So coming up will be Senator David Carlucci. Stay tuned.